Okay, so for my shoulder pads, I decided to go with this high-density polyurethane foam. I bought it at a big craft store, so you might find better options online. It says it cuts easily into any shape, so let's put it to the test. Unpacking my foam, and I'm going to start by drawing the basic shape of the shoulder pad freehand. I just installed a pair of store-bought pads in the last coat I made, so I can do this from memory. He's going to have a straight edge at the sleeve cap, so I'll cut a triangular shape starting from the edge of the foam sheet. Cutting the foam was much more difficult than I had expected. Thankfully, it doesn't have to be pretty or even smooth. It's going to be inside of the jacket. So I'm just going to open my scissors as wide as they'll go, and I'm just going to hack right through it. It makes a satisfying snap as you cut it, similar to snapping bubble wrap. So it's actually quite fun to do. And now you're seeing just how jagged it looks, but that's okay because it's going inside the garment. And now I'm going to start trimming it. I'll use the first piece to trace the second. And now I'm going to grade the edges by cutting the corners at an angle to really drive home that triangular shape. It's kind of like I'm giving it a haircut. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful thing you ever saw. It's a foundation piece. Oh, and now it looks like I'm really giving it a haircut. This is a 2-inch high 80 style pad, so I made the sleeve cap 2 inches higher in my jacket. I only had to add 2 inches to the height, so it was an easy adjustment. And I designed the shoulder pad to go between the outer layers of the jacket and the lining, so I just cut out the lining to fit the natural shape of the shoulders. And the goal is just to sandwich the pad between the layers. And to figure out how much I'm going to cut off, I'm going to start by placing it on my model. And then I'm going to draw a straight line from the base of her neck to the corner of the pad, so her shoulders will be even from end to end. And now moving on to the casing for my padding. I'm using this scrap of fabric I found. I couldn't tell you what it is. It was just in my collection. It's very elastic. Be just what I need to force this shoulder pad into the desired shape. And so my hands are free. While I'm tracing it out, I'm going to tie it into that shape using this shoelace. And as you can see, that's going to more or less fit. I could have scooped out the inside of the foam, but I didn't want to upset the integrity of the foam. Now I'm going to trace around my pad, leaving a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's the difference between the edge of the fabric and the needle. That'll give me enough room to make adjustments and to make sure it fits. And simply just kind of cut it out with my scissors. Since I didn't draw this symmetrically, I'm just going to cut halfway and then fold the fabric over and follow the lines that I already cut. You can see I was way off. This is why a seam allowance is important. I'm leaving the bottom flat, and I'm molding it into place on the model, but it's the casing that'll give the padding the proper curvature. And I just decided I'm going to go for it. I'm going to throw caution to the wind and say that the first piece is good enough that I'm just going to use it to cut out the second piece. Now I'm cutting the bottom. And the bottom is going to be smaller than the pad itself. And the idea is that I'm going to be forcing it to curve. It's not going to want to curve, but I'm going to make it curve. And it's going to attach to that front piece just like so. And we're going to put the right sides together so that seam will be on the inside. But these seams that I'm tracing out now, the triangular portion is going to be sewn on the outside. Because there's no sense in fighting with this thing to turn it inside out when it's going inside of a jacket. And I'm basically following the same style that the manufacturers did for the store-bought pad. They also sewed their seams on the outside. And now I'm moving on to the sewing portion. I'm going to start, I think, by sewing the bottom portion. I'm going to sew the flat piece to the curve of the outside piece. Right sides together so the seam is inside the pad. So I can have a nice flat finish and no lumps in my jacket. It's easy enough, the fabric stretches. So I just have to start with the first edge matching and stop every now and then as I go to make sure it's still staying lined up. And now I'm going to put in some stay stitching because the top curve is much more dramatic than the bottom curve. And I'm going to need to cut notches in order to make it fit properly. Because even though it's a stretchy fabric, it still needs help to get around a drastic turn. I'm doing a cut about every half an inch or so. You don't want to overdo it. Here's a shot for the camera. Just cut triangular portions out down to the stay stitching. Stay stitching is there so the fabric won't tear, obviously. Now I'm just going to match corner to corner. And sew a straight stitch all the way around. If you're a first-time sewer, you might need to pin it quite a bit, but I've been doing this long enough that I can do it freehand most of the time without pins. Thankfully. It's a relief not to be constantly stabbed by pins. And anyway, you can see I already tore some seams out. I made them in black, so you can see what I'm doing, and as you can tell, I made a mistake earlier. I had to pick it apart and start again. I do have to stop and start again frequently. You always put the needle back down when you stop because the fabric is going to want to pull away and mess up your stitching. And as long as the corners match, I'm good to go. Alright, and now I threw in a couple stitches at the back so that the top and the bottom match, because while you're sewing on a machine, especially with stretchy fabric, it'll tend to pull one side further than the other, and it'll seem like you've run out of fabric. And when that happens, that's when I have to take it apart and start again. So it's much easier just to have a stitch right in the center of both pieces, holding them together, so you know what you're working with. And now I'm putting the foam inside. I'm going to have to squish it quite a bit. That's why I've changed my foot to the zipper foot, so I can get the needle as close to the foam as possible. Now the first half will be easy because I don't have to have the foam squished in to do the first half. Just making sure it fits here. And then I'm going to put it right up to the edge of the foam and following around the curve, just with a straight stitch still in my zipper foot, stopping every now and then to make sure my fabric is lined up properly and that my stay stitches are holding. And I made it to the back. So now this is the home stretch here. I'm gonna have to jam this foam in as hard as I can. And so right up to the edge. And hopefully it won't pull on the stitches too much. And this fabric is nice and thick to hide the terrible haircut I gave this foam. Let me show you how that looks. Seam is on the inside. So I just gotta pull on it here to get the foam to fill the whole space. And hopefully when it does, it'll be in the correct shape. Let's go turn the threads. That corner does not want to come out. It will in time. All right. So there you have it. Now I'm going to switch to a zigzag stitch and my regular zipper foot because I don't have to be quite so close to the edge this time. I don't have to be quite so close to the foam is what I mean. I'm sewing over the edge to secure it with these extra stitches. Also gives it a nicer look. Not that it matters, but again, I would care because I would know. And I don't need it coming apart inside my jacket either. That's the finished product right there. And the curve is present. I probably should have scooped out a little bit of the bottom, just to make it just right. Okay, it's time to check out my model. This is the before shot of the jacket with no pads. My model's name is Mina, short for Pashmina. I thought she'd look good with a nice red wig with this black jacket. All right, let's meet our shoulder pads. Jacket, shoulder pad, jacket. You're about to see what it looks like inside. So it should be that size. And for the big reveal, her shoulder's a little bit narrow, so you can't really see it that well. But let me adjust it a bit. Now she's cutting a severe figure. Well, thank you for watching. Please like this video.